Hello, everyone. First of all, an admission, I'm not a cyberneticist. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to reframe what I'm going to say into your own words. That's not to say we don't think about systems, complex adaptive systems, feedback loops, emergent behaviors, butterfly wing effects. We do. But our thinking about systems is grounded in the reality of, well, the food system. Our focus is the health, in every sense of the word, and the happiness of the population of this city. And food, we've learned, is a brilliant way of doing this. It has meant that we've had to get our heads around the food system, which is necessarily and desirably global in any conurbation in the UK, as in many places across the world. 99.99% of the food we eat is brought in by rail or truck or air freight. What the Food Council does is to seek to be an exemplar, not in about what to do, we don't have the resources to do very much, but in how to think about the food system. So come with me on a thought journey about the threats and the risks to the UK food system, future food system shocks. Something about our work in progress, about how to make the UK better prepared to respond to these shocks, and the ethical challenges and opportunities in so doing. The story begins 3 years ago when we carried out a horizon scanning project, and it hammered home to us not just the significance of climate change, resource depletion, population pressures, and the geopolitics associated with all of that, but the urgency of it, and that socio-political decision makers appeared unnerved by this. Everything was calm. They weren't doing anything. So what should we do? Well, we invented the game, which when we talk about it, we put it on that kind of ominous tone. And when we write about it, we put it in a Gothic script to hammer home how urgent it all is. And the game, the players in the game, are presented with scenarios. The players we've had playing the game, lots of them, we've had local councillors, decision makers, emergency planners, spatial planners, economists, food sector professionals, ordinary citizens, youngsters who've worked with us on some of our arts programs. The food sector people are really important because people really don't understand much about the system beyond the farm, between the farm gate and the supermarket shelf. And actually that middle bit is where nearly all of the action happens and nearly all of the value happens. And what we do with the players is that we throw at them events. They're responsible for a city, let me say, for feeding a population of a city. They are in charge of a city. And we throw at them events. To begin with, they're events that have already happened somewhere in the world over the previous year. And then as we progress through time in the game, we throw at them possibilities, plausible possibilities, which we've gleaned from reading the literature on the matter. Responses range quite a way. One councillor, his solution to the problem was to plant potatoes along the A38, the verges of the A38, which is a major arterial route into the city, dual carriageway. Didn't he understand scale? But Birmingham has 1.2 million people, for example, each requiring 2,000 calories a day. That's 2.4 billion calories every day that needs to come into the city. And besides which, Would you want to eat potatoes that are grown among car fumes? Birmingham's a former industrial city, so in soils that may quite well be heavily contaminated with heavy metals. That matters. It's been estimated that a third of children in rural China are cognitively stunted because of air pollution and soil pollution. The global competition for safe, nutritious food is intense and will increase. Imagine yourself in China, one of the growing middle class. Would you want to eat food that's grown in polluted areas, or would you rather buy off the global market? Another player, a former chief executive of a major UK city, he realized early on into the plausible bit, the plausible scenarios, that he didn't have the power to do what's needed. It's a governance issue. He said very early on, this is a governance issue. We must bring the army in. It's difficult. It's really difficult. People didn't know what to do or how to think. And now COVID has happened. And some of the players of the game have called us up, saying, early on, saying, Kate, we're in the game, aren't we? Oh, yes. And then they continue to say, look, of all the things that are happening in the food sector, nothing is surprising us. Compare that to this comment from a senior city official just after lockdown, when large numbers of our citizens couldn't access food. And he said, I quote, "What has surprised us is how fragile the food system is and how powerless we are." Welcome to the game, I thought. I'm now going to share with you a video, and it asks this question: how prepared are we? So where are we? How prepared are we? Do we have a plan? Have we tested it? Do we have spare capacity? Do we have the right mix of nutrients there? Do we have some kind of buffer stock, so to store and rotate that storing? Because after all, nutrient foods go off sometimes. And do we have a mechanism to pay for it in perpetuity? Nope. So these questions about having a buffer capacity for food has occupied us over the last couple of months. And to begin with, what we did is ask people questions about these issues, especially about nutrient capacity. When people think of food reserves, they tend to think in terms of cereals. They're easy to store, as indeed are things like confectionery. But you can't live off cereals and confectionery. You want nutrient-dense foods into the population, as well as calories. And we talked to a similarly wide range of people about what this buffer capacity could look like, and what storage was needed, and in particular how to pay, because the moment you take stocks out of a commercial system with just-in-time supply system, that's a cost. You're not making any money out of the food, and it's a cost to store it. So having interviewed lots of individuals, we then came up with a plan in concrete terms about this buffer stock and what it could be like. And then we tested it. We are testing it through a series of workshops. We've run 2 already, and we've got another one next Thursday. Facilitated workshops, and we put an observer in it as well. The first one was 3 people, the second one was 5 people. And we gave them the scenario of a successful buffer capacity system in place. And what were the glitches in it? What worked, what didn't work? And thereby we generated a whole host of really interesting ideas, and some of the things that we were talked about in our first plan, we've amended, we've changed. A fresh produce wholesaler, for example, said, well, we're going to have to change the shape of the food system, the food supply system. That happened in the energy supply system with a climate change levy. Could we have a food resilience levy? Why not? Another participant, a senior executive with a supermarket, said, there's something about governments and the state. The state has to set up things in perpetuity, and then the government has to enable this to happen. They're enablers. And there are cultural issues too. Somebody else said, couldn't we have a new community service sector building on what happened in COVID with the third sector, and have some kind of system where there's a cultural change, where everybody, regardless of socioeconomic status, has access to mass catering. So it's not just free school dinners or food banks, which have all sorts of social stigmas attached to them. It would actually be part of the fabric of our society. I'm now going to describe one tiny aspect of this buffer contingency stock, which is what stocks to put in place. And it's even a tiny aspect of all of that. A butterfly wing, if you like. And through it, I'm going to illustrate some of the ethical considerations that having a buffer stock capacity generates. And this butterfly wing is a curious, frankly boring mechanism, which in an oddly powerful way tells us what stocks to put in to some kind of reserve system, and raises many of the ethical questions about the food system. And it's a tax. I said it was boring. It's a tax. It's VAT, value added tax. And for any Americans in the audience, that is, in essence, a sales tax. See what you make of this second video. Let me explain a bit more. That has its origins in a tax that was introduced in 1940 in this country when we were at war, and as an island there was a blockade, and the government introduced something that they call purchase tax. And they taxed everything, that they could, except essentials. And of course, food, nutritious food, is essential. So food, then as now, nutritious food is zero rated. Don't pay tax on it. Having said that, wartime government, and to this day, what's interesting are the foodstuffs, the food and drink that do carry standard rate VAT. And they are the drug foods. They're addictive. Some of the things that are taxed, all confectionery, nearly all drinks, not milk, of course, because that's a nutritious food. Yes, alcohol. Also savoury snacks. You say to me, are they drugs? Well, they're designed, specifically designed to be highly moreish. And indeed, they have that effect on our brains, the similar effect as drugs. So yes. The drug foods are sugar and sweeteners. Sweeteners will do just as much damage to you as sugars, if not more. The latest research suggests they do more harm. So the sugar tax, with manufacturers putting in sweeteners instead, is likely to increase type 2 diabetes, not reduce it. Caffeine, of course. Diet fizzy drinks contain, just in case sweeteners aren't addictive, they usually put in more caffeine, which is, of course, addictive. Chocolate and alcohol. And over 50% of the UK's household budget is on food and beverages that carry VAT. What are the ethical implications of flapping this wing in saying that we're not going to have any company that makes or promotes VAT-rated food and beverage products engaged in or contributing to the buffer stock capacity? Think about what the impact might be and what the ethical considerations are in diet-related morbidities, obesity, malnutrition, cognitive stunting. Also, in recycling, these products require packaging. Indeed, we've calculated that Coca-Cola, just one company alone, Birmingham City Council has to deal with 100 million cans and bottles from Coca-Cola alone every year. So it's not just human health, it's planetary health too. And people don't think about this. The production of these goods take up the agri-resources of land, soil, water, and energy. Let me give you a couple of instances. Last year, 6% of the UK's potato crop was owned by PepsiCo, who own Walker's Crisps. That's crisps are chips to the American audience. And 6% of the crop went to make these products. 24% of the UK potato crop goes to McCain's, who make frozen chips, confusingly for the American audience, chips, you call them fries. Whatever, 30% of the UK potato crop goes to make products that are not as nutritious as potatoes, indeed do as harm. And at least one of them is addictive. Is this a sensible use of agri-resources, let alone the effect on our health? The agri-resources of land, soil, energy, and water. And here's a little factoid about water, terrifying factoid. The United Nations estimates that by 2025, so 4 years ahead, there will be 1.8 billion people living with absolute water scarcity, with a further 2/3 of the world's population living in water-stressed regions. And that already includes southeast England. Put that in the context of this. In 2012, it's been estimated that Coca-Cola's global water consumption was enough to meet the annual needs of over 2 billion people. Ethics, eh? And here's a little note about comparing government action about obesity and these kind of issues and the government action in dealing with smokers. Note that our buffer capacity system prohibits not just the products, but any company that makes and promotes these products that carry standard rate VAT. Governments, health authorities, the NHS currently exhort people to behave differently. They talk about all sorts of things, but in essence, it's about the individual having to change their behavior. It won't work. Moreover, because it won't work, it contributes to the physical and mental ill health of many people. Compare that to our treatment of smoking, not smokers, smoking. We knew that action should be taken against corporations, that the way to reduce smoking was to increase the price that companies had to charge through excise, duty, and taxes, to stop advertising and sponsorship, and to disallow research partnerships in universities except under very, very, very special conditions. What I've described to you is one single aspect of this huge topic: how to make the UK better prepared for future food system shocks. How we can put what Michael Sandel has termed civic virtue at the heart of enabling everyone, regardless of socioeconomic status, to eat great food in great company, whether their own company or with others, with food prepared and served with love and laughter. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening.